7 years and still no child.
Marcus, please. We can see another specialist. There's still hope.
No child, you just barren.
Marcus, please.
7 years. 7 long years of waiting, praying, hoping. 7 years of being barren while whispers followed her everywhere she went. And when the wait became too much, her husband sent her away, cast her out. But guess what happened next? She didn't just have one child, she had triplets. 3 beautiful blessings that silenced every doubter. Now, you're probably wondering, how did we get here? What's the full story? Let's go back to the beginning. Follow me as we uncover every moment that led to this miraculous turn of events. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. Once upon a time, in the glittering heart of Manhattan, there lived a woman named Victoria Hayes. She had everything the world admired: a penthouse apartment, designer clothes, and a husband worth billions. But she was missing the one thing that truly mattered: a child. For 7 long years, Victoria watched the calendar with hope that slowly turned to heartbreak. Every month, the same crushing disappointment. Every month, another piece of her spirit quietly breaking. Her husband, Marcus Sterling, was one of New York's most powerful CEOs, ruthless in business, cold in love, and growing colder with each passing year. One evening, the storm that had been building finally broke. The bedroom door swung open. Marcus walked in, his $5,000 suit perfect, his eyes empty of warmth. 7 years, Victoria, he said, his voice like shattered glass. 7 years, and still no child. Victoria's hands trembled. Marcus, please, we can see another specialist. There's still hope. Hope? He laughed, but there was no joy in it. I'm tired of hope. I need a son to carry my legacy. And you? He paused, letting the silence cut deeper. You're just empty. That word hung in the air like poison. Empty. Victoria fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face. Please, Marcus, we made vows, for better or worse. He interrupted, each word a dagger. I don't love you anymore. I want you out by morning. The door slammed, and in that moment, Victoria Hayes' world ended. Or so she thought. Because sometimes the worst day of your life becomes the first day of your freedom. 3 hours later, Victoria stood in the rain outside a modest Brooklyn apartment, holding a single suitcase that contained 7 years of her life. Her best friend, Rachel, opened the door and pulled her inside without a word. That night, wrapped in borrowed blankets, drinking tea she couldn't taste, Victoria told Rachel everything. That bastard? Rachel hissed. After everything you sacrificed? After you stood by him when his company almost collapsed? Maybe he's right, Victoria whispered. Maybe I am broken. No, Rachel gripped her shoulders. Tomorrow, we're going to the best fertility clinic in the city. Not for him, for you. You deserve to know the truth. The next morning, they sat across from Dr. Sarah Chen at Hope Medical Center. Victoria had been tested, scanned, examined for 3 hours. Now the moment of truth. Dr. Chen smiled gently. Victoria, I have your results. Victoria braced herself for the worst. You are perfectly healthy. Your reproductive system is functioning beautifully. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. The room spun. What? Victoria could barely breathe. Dr. Chen continued, measured. In cases like yours, approximately 40% of the time, the issue is with the male partner. I strongly recommend your ex-husband get tested. 7 years. 7 years of blame. 7 years of shame. 7 years of lies. Victoria covered her mouth, tears flowing freely. But these tears were different. These tears were washing away the lies she'd been forced to believe. Rachel jumped up. I knew it. That man is going to regret this. But Victoria wasn't thinking about revenge. Not yet. She was thinking about rebirth. I'm going to rebuild my life, she said quietly, a spark igniting in her eyes. And one day, Marcus Sterling will see exactly what he threw away. And so, in a small Brooklyn apartment above a bakery, Victoria Hayes began again. 6 months passed like pages in a book Victoria was learning to rewrite. She worked in Rachel's bakery, rediscovering the simple joy of creating something with her own hands. Her croissants became legendary in the neighborhood. Life was simpler, quieter, and slowly, peacefully beautiful. One Tuesday morning, a man walked in wearing a simple gray t-shirt and jeans. No designer labels, no flashy watch, just kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. I heard you have the best almond croissants in New York, he said warmly. Victoria looked up from the counter. That's what they say. First time here? Yeah, just moved into the area. He extended his hand. James Chen. He came back the next day, and the next, and the next. Always friendly, always respectful, never pushing. They talked about small things, books, movies, the weather. He never asked about her past, and she didn't volunteer it. 3 months later, a rainy afternoon after helping her clean up, James paused. Victoria, he said gently, would you have dinner with me? She hesitated. The wounds were still fresh. James, I'm not sure I'm ready, he said, his voice impossibly gentle. I know you're healing from something. I can see it. I'm not asking you to be ready for anything serious. Just one evening. If you hate it, we go back to croissants and small talk. Victoria looked at this man who asked for nothing but her company, who saw her, not her pain. Okay, she whispered. One dinner. One dinner became walks in Central Park. Walks became movie nights. Movie nights became Victoria laughing again, really laughing. 3 months later, James took her hand across a restaurant table and said the words she thought she'd never hear again. Victoria Hayes, I wake up every morning thinking about you. I go to sleep every night grateful you exist. You are brilliant. You are strong, and you are the most beautiful soul I've ever met. I'm not Marcus. I will never be Marcus. I don't care about empires or legacies or what people think. I care about you. Just you. I love you, Victoria. Completely, imperfectly, forever. For the first time in years, Victoria Hayes felt truly safe. And she whispered through tears the words her heart had been afraid to speak. I love you, too. 6 months later, they married in a small garden ceremony. No press, no spectacle, just love. But the universe wasn't finished with Victoria's story. The greatest miracle was still to come. On their honeymoon in Santorini, Victoria felt different, nauseous, tired. Something whispered in her heart. Back in New York, she took a test. Positive. At the doctor's office, the news was confirmed. But then, at the 12-week ultrasound, something extraordinary happened. Wait, Dr. Chen said, moving the probe slowly. Victoria, James, I'm seeing 3 heartbeats. 3? James nearly knocked over his chair. You're having triplets. 3 healthy babies. Victoria screamed. Nurses came running, but she was laughing and crying, and James was on his knees, his head against her belly, sobbing with joy. 3, he kept repeating. 3 miracles. But across the city, in a penthouse office, Marcus Sterling was having the worst year of his life. After divorcing Victoria, he'd remarried quickly. Vanessa Knight was everything Victoria wasn't. Flashy, social, obsessed with status. But 2 years later, Vanessa wasn't pregnant either. Maybe we should see a doctor, Vanessa suggested. You see a doctor, Marcus snapped. I'm fine. But privately, doubt was creeping in. One afternoon, an older man in a white robe walked into Marcus's office, bypassing security like smoke through a keyhole. Who are you? Marcus demanded. The old man's eyes were piercing. 7 years ago, you cast out a faithful woman. You called her barren, worthless, empty. How do you know? Hear these words, Marcus Sterling, and mark them well. The woman you called barren will return with 3 sons. She will arrive in a chariot of black while you stand in white, waiting for joy. But your joy will turn to ash. Your pride will become your prison. Your wife will leave you. Your company will crumble. Your name will become a warning. And on the day you finally bow your head in humility, you will see her standing tall, the woman you destroyed, now clothed in honor. Security, Marcus shouted. But when guards burst in, the old man was gone, vanished, like he was never there. Marcus tried to laugh it off, just some crazy street preacher. But that night, and every night after, the words echoed in his mind. The woman you called barren will return with 3 sons? Marcus shook his head. Impossible. But the universe was about to prove that some prophecies are unbreakable. 3 years after leaving Marcus, Victoria's life had transformed completely. The triplets, Daniel, Matthew, and Joshua, were now 2 years old. 3 beautiful boys with Victoria's eyes and James's smile. But there was something else Victoria had discovered, something that would change everything. James Chen wasn't just a software engineer. He was James Chen, the James Chen, founder and CEO of Chen Technologies, a cybersecurity firm valued at $3.8 billion. Why didn't you tell me? Victoria had asked when she finally found out. James smiled. Because women usually treat me differently when they know. You saw me, just me. I didn't want to lose that. But there was more to the story. Victoria, James said on their first anniversary, there's something you need to know about Marcus Sterling. Her stomach dropped. You know Marcus? We were business partners. 8 years ago, we co-founded a tech startup together. I did all the engineering, the innovation. Marcus handled business. He stole it. Right before we were about to go public, he manipulated the paperwork, kicked me out, took sole ownership. The company sold for $400 million. My half would have been $200 million. Instead, I got nothing. Victoria's eyes widened. The man she'd married had betrayed the man she'd remarried. The universe wasn't just poetic. It was orchestrating justice. Meanwhile, Marcus's world was crumbling. His company was hemorrhaging money, bad investments, failed products, his reputation in tatters. And then one morning, his CFO delivered the final blow. Marcus, Chen Technologies just acquired 51% of our shares. They own controlling interest. You've been ousted as CEO. The room spun, and they've appointed a new chief operating officer. The name on the document made Marcus's heart stop. Victoria Hayes Chen. His ex-wife, now married to the man he'd betrayed, now his boss. That evening, Marcus did what he'd sworn he'd never do. He went to a fertility clinic. The doctor was blunt. "Mr. Sterling, your sperm count is extremely low. You have less than a 2% chance of natural conception. This appears to be from an untreated infection from years ago. You've likely been infertile for over a decade." Victoria was never the problem. It had always been him. 2 weeks later, Vanessa filed for divorce. She told the press, "I wasted 3 years on a man who couldn't give me children and blamed everyone but himself." The headlines were brutal. Sterling's secret shame, tech CEO's infertility exposed. 2 wives, 0 children. The fall of Marcus Sterling. Ex-wife's revenge. Victoria Hayes Chen becomes boss of man who called her barren. His company gone, his wife gone, his reputation destroyed. And then the invitation arrived. An invitation to his own wedding. The wedding where the prophecy would finally be fulfilled. The Plaza Hotel gleamed with 500 guests in designer gowns and tuxedos. White roses covered every surface. Crystal chandeliers sparkled like captured stars. Marcus Sterling stood at the altar in his white tuxedo, trying to look confident. This was his comeback, his redemption. His new bride, Isabella Ross, was waiting in the bridal suite, 24 years old, pharmaceutical heiress, his fresh start. But his hands were trembling. "The woman you called barren will return with 3 sons. She will arrive in a chariot of black while you stand in white." He shook his head. "Just a crazy old man," he muttered. The string quartet began playing. Isabella would walk down the aisle any moment, but then the musicians stopped. Confused, looking toward the entrance, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Marcus turned. The main doors of the plaza swung open. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, glossy black like polished midnight, had somehow been driven right up to the entrance. The crowd gasped. The driver's door opened. James Chen stepped out wearing an immaculate charcoal suit. He moved to the back door and opened it with the grace of a man who'd done this 1,000 times. Victoria emerged. Marcus's heart stopped. She wore a floor-length emerald gown that caught the light like liquid jewels. Her hair fell in elegant waves, diamond earrings sparkled, but it was her face that struck him. Radiant, peaceful, glowing. This wasn't the broken woman who'd left his house in tears. This was a queen. And then 3 little boys stepped out behind her, each wearing tiny matching suits, wide, curious eyes. Triplets. 3 sons. The prophecy. The woman you called barren will return with 3 sons in a chariot of black while you stand in white. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. The entire room had gone silent. 500 people holding their breath. Every head turned. Victoria walked forward slowly, James on one side, the 3 boys holding hands beside them. They moved down the aisle, not toward the altar, but to the front row of seats. She didn't look at Marcus, didn't acknowledge him at all. She simply sat down, settled the boys beside her, and smiled serenely at James, who kissed her forehead. The crowd erupted. "Is that his ex-wife? Those are her sons? I thought she was barren. Oh my God, is that James Chen? The billionaire. She married James Chen." Marcus stood frozen at the altar, his white tuxedo suddenly feeling like a straitjacket. His throat had closed. His hands were shaking. Marcus! Isabella's voice came through his earpiece. Marcus, what's happening? Why did the music stop? One of the triplets, Daniel, looked up at Marcus and waved innocently. Hi! The crowd laughed, charmed. Victoria finally met Marcus's eyes. She didn't grin triumphantly, didn't gloat. She simply nodded once, a small acknowledgement, and then turned her attention back to James. The message was clear. You are no longer relevant to my story. Marcus! Isabella's voice in her ear was shrill now. What is going on? And then Marcus did something no one expected. He pulled off his microphone, dropped it on the altar, and walked off. Not out of the room, but toward Victoria. The crowd gasped. Marcus stopped 3 feet from where Victoria sat. James tensed, but Victoria touched his arm gently. It's okay. Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. They're beautiful. Victoria said nothing. I was wrong about everything. The room was dead silent. I called you empty, broken, worthless. Tears were streaming down his face now. But I was the broken one. I was the empty one. And I'm so sorry. Marcus fell to his knees right there, in his white tuxedo, in front of 500 guests, in front of the world. Victoria, please, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just need you to know you were never the problem. You were perfect, and I destroyed the best thing in my life because I was too proud, too stupid, too cruel to see it. Victoria looked at this man who had once been her everything, now broken on the marble floor of the Plaza Hotel. She felt James's hand squeeze hers, felt her son's pressed against her sides, felt the weight of everything she'd survived and overcome, and she felt nothing. No anger, no vindication, no satisfaction, just peace. She stood slowly, James and the boys rising with her. She looked down at Marcus. I forgive you, she said quietly, not because you deserve it, but because I'm free. I spent years carrying the weight of your cruelty. I'm not carrying it anymore. But Marcus, you need to forgive yourself. You need to get help. You need to heal. Because this, she gestured to the ruined wedding around them, this isn't living. This is running. She turned to James. Let's go. James nodded, scooped up 2 of the boys, and Victoria took the 3rd. They walked back down the aisle, the Rolls-Royce still waiting at the entrance. Behind them, chaos erupted. Isabella screamed from the bridal suite. Guests pulled out phones, recording everything. Marcus's mother was crying. The wedding planner was having a breakdown. And Marcus Sterling remained on his knees, watching the woman he'd destroyed walk away, whole, healed, and happy, while his entire world burned down around him. The prophecy was complete. Later, the headline read, Sterling Enterprises files for bankruptcy. Former CEO Marcus Sterling seeks treatment for mental health. Below it, another article. Chen Technologies named Most Innovative Company of the Year. COO, Victoria Hayes Chen, credited with revolutionary leadership. In their Brooklyn brownstone, Victoria sat on the floor with the triplets, building a tower of blocks. James walked in from his home office, smiling. Boys, guess what? What, Daddy? They chorused. We're going to Disney World. The screams of joy made Victoria laugh. Later, after the boys were in bed, James and Victoria sat on their balcony overlooking the city. Did you see the news about Marcus? James asked gently. I did. Victoria sipped her tea. I hope he finds peace. You're remarkably gracious. I'm remarkably free, she corrected. There's a difference. James pulled her close. You know what I realized? What? If Marcus hadn't been cruel, if he'd never thrown you out, we never would have met. You wouldn't have been at Rachel's bakery. These 3 miracles wouldn't exist. Victoria looked at the baby monitor showing her sleeping sons. I don't believe God causes pain, she said softly, but I do believe he redeems it. Marcus tried to write my ending. He tried to define my worth, but God had the final word. And what word was that? She smiled, standing and pulling James up with her. Resurrection. Inside, one of the boys, Matthew, stirred in his sleep, smiled and whispered, "Mommy!" And in that Brooklyn brownstone, in that moment, there was nothing but peace, love, and the quiet triumph of a woman who refused to stay broken. Sometimes, the woman you call barren becomes a mother. Sometimes the treasure you discard becomes someone else's fortune. Sometimes the ending you write becomes the beginning you never saw coming. And sometimes the last becomes first. This is the story of Victoria Hayes Chen, the woman who was called empty and became overflow.